So you guys have been waiting so patiently for this pattern and video tutorial on how to make these cute little mini moccasin keychains. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. So if you grab the pattern, you should have this from our website. You're going to want to print it out. It's going to have the template that you're going to want to cut out, and you're going to trace that onto the hide that you want to use. So the pattern has 3 pieces. If you have the kit, you will have a few more pieces and supplies. But this is just what you'll get if you decided to go with the free pattern and PDF that we offer. So you're just going to cut those pieces out and follow the instructions on the paper provided, and it will show you how to measure the fur. And the only thing we did not include is the little keychain strap for the free one, because it's totally up to you if you want to add that, or if you want to add a smaller piece or a longer one if you want to make like an ornament or a keychain. Totally up to you. However, this is going to be for the kit that we're offering, so I'm going to show you how to assemble the keychain from all the pieces provided in the kit. All right, so if you have the kit, you're going to have 3 pieces that are going to make up the mitten, and then you're going to have the piece for the keychain if you wish to add it. That's going to go right there in the middle. And then you're going to have your fur, so your rabbit fur. There's an arrow pointing in the direction that the fur goes, so there's usually a direction for the fur. You're going to have your beading thread, your beading needle. It's a small one, so that one goes with the beading thread. And then you're going to have your glover's needle, which is a bigger needle. That's what we're going to be sewing it up with. So you can see that one is a little bit bigger. And we're going to use sinew for that one. And then you're going to have a little piece of liner. We're going to use that to stuff our mittens when we're finished. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our one piece of leather. That's going to be the front of the mitten. And this is where we're going to do our beading. So you want to make sure that you're doing your beading on the good side of the leather. The leather usually has a good side and a bad side. You might be able to see some roughness on the bad side, or the lines where you traced it out, or in the kit sometimes. So just try to make sure that you're always sewing the good sides together. So first thing, we are going to get our beading needle ready and our beading thread. So you want to grab a decent size of your beading thread and thread your needle. I double it up, and I'm going to put a little knot at the end here. So just make a little knot at the end. Okay, and then you can decide on what colors you want to use. The kits do come with a mix of different colors, so you can pick which colors you like. Be creative. If you have your own stuff, go ahead and use it as well, or make a new design. I'm just going to show you a very simple flower design for this one. So if you're new to beading, then I'm going to try to walk you through step by step on how to just make a simple little flower. If you want to find the center line and you want to make a design in the middle, then you would just fold it in half and make a little tick mark, and you have your center line if you want your beading in the center of your mitten. So here we start. We're just going to go up through the back with our beading needle and thread. And you don't want to go too close to the edges, because we're going to be sewing that up and we're not flipping it inside out. I'm doing a seam on the outside, so you can see there where I placed it. So I'm going to start with the center of the flower. So I'm just going to grab one color. I'm using yellow, and you want to just hold the thread with your left hand, put your needle right beside the bead, and push down and bring it through the back, just like that. And that's our middle. Pretty easy. Okay, so then we want to do the flower that goes around the middle. So we want to go just beside where the first bead is. Not too close, or it's going to be scrunched up, but not too far, because you're going to have spaces in between. So if you're new to beading, this might take a few times just to kind of space it out and get it correct, but this one's pretty simple to do. So we're going to grab 6 or 7 beads. I'm using 6 here, but you can use 7. 7 works as well for the flower. Okay, and we're going to make it go in a circle. So how I do it is I just bring my needle right up where we came, right through the front to where we came up with our first bead for that little circle. And that kind of creates a little loop. And then I use my left hand to kind of hold it in place and have it go around the yellow bead. And then I'm going to bring my needle back up through the front. You kind of have to hold it with one hand there. And then we're going to take our needle, we're going to go through 3 beads. And you can see here that still doesn't complete our flower, so I'm going to have to go through 1 more bead or 2. And that kind of creates a circle there. See, just like that. And you want to pull it, make sure it's snug, but not too tight, or it's going to pull and your design won't look so nice. So then after we're done our circle, we're going to put our needle back through the front and bring it through the back, and then we're going to tack down some of those beads. So again, we're doing the same thing we did before, but this time we're not adding any beads. We're just going over the thread, sorry, in between the beads, tacking down that thread. So you're going from left to right, one side of the bead, you can see here. So this one going right, and then just pulling my thread, and that just kind of tacks down the bead so they don't move around. So you can do that for every bead if you'd like, or every second bead, totally preference, whatever you like to do, whatever you're comfortable with. Or if you have a different way that you do the flowers, you don't have to copy exactly, but you can, don't mind. Okay, so we're done our first flower. We're going to add the little leaves on the side. So I'm going to grab 1 green bead. So I'm going to go up just beside where I want the little petal, or sorry, the leaf to sit. I'm going to grab 1 green and just kind of place it where I want it to be, and then I'm just going to take my needle and go right beside where I want it to sit. So just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to add 1 more on the opposite side. So same thing, going up through the back, bringing my needle up to the front, grabbing 1 bead. You can see it kind of bunches up, so you got to make sure you don't pull that too tight. And grabbing 1 green, and then just doing the same thing. So just going through the front and bringing my thread and needle through the back. And there we have 1 flower. So we're going to repeat that. We're going to do the same thing, just a few, maybe like 1/2 inch away. Just so we have 2 little flowers there. You can pick different colors, or you could do the same color, but we're just going to repeat that same process we did. Okay, so once we're done the second flower, we can go ahead and cut off our thread. And then I'm going to do a double knot on the back just to make sure the beads are secure. So 1 knot there. And then 1 more knot. And then you just want to snip that off, any excess that you have there. And then the beading is done. So now we're going to start the assembly of these 3 pieces here. Okay, so we want to make sure, again, we're looking for the bad side. So you can see that one's the bad side, it's a little rougher. And you want to do that for all 3 pieces. And you can kind of line it up here to get an idea of how it sits. So that's the bad side. We're going to have that facing the inside. We want all the good sides facing out. And you can see here, it kind of looks like it doesn't match up when you have it laying together, but it will once you start sewing it. I'll give you guys step by step so you'll see that. Okay, so for me, I find clips kind of help keep things in place while I'm sewing. You don't have to use clips if you don't have them, just makes it a little easier. So I'm just gonna kind of find my center point here and line up everything. so I can keep everything in the position it has to be in. If you don't have it, not a big deal at all. You just have to be a little more aware of making sure everything is sitting the way it should. So we're going to grab that Glover needle, and we're going to grab some sinew. And you want to cut a long enough piece so that you don't have to keep rethreading, but not too long that it's hard to work with. So I would say maybe like an arm length of the sinew. And sometimes we send it in the little bobbins there, or just rolled up, so you won't have the big roll like we have for this, because that's just way too much for the project. And then you want to grab your sinew in the middle, and it should come apart in a few strands, like 3, maybe 4 strands. It's waxy, so it should unravel quite easily, and then you can just separate it, and you're going to use one of the strands to sew. Okay, so once you've got one strand ready to go, we're going to put that through our Glover's needle here, and same thing as we did for the beading, so we're going to double that up and then just tie it off at the end, make a little knot. And then with the sinew, I like to burn the ends just because it's waxy and it does unravel a little bit, so just burn a little bit at the end, give it a second to cool off, and then you're good to go. So we're going to start up the sewing of 2 pieces, so we're not going to be doing the bottom piece just yet, and I'll show you a little trick for attaching the fur easily too, instead of having to try to force it in the little hole after you're done everything. So a little trick that I learned over the years for even like the adult mittens, super helpful. So I just went and grabbed my thimble. If you don't have one, you don't need one. It just kind of helps protect, because I sew a lot and I need to keep my hands somewhat functional, or else I don't have a job. So here we're starting. I don't know if you saw, but the tail end of the sinew, I just tucked it in between the 2 layers, so you're not going to see it sticking out. So we're just going to continue stitching up the beaded piece and the top piece that makes the thumb. And I am doing just a blanket stitch here. So the blanket stitch is just going through, so I'm going through both hides, and then I'm just going through that loop. So see here, pushing through both and then going through the loop. And this technique, I feel like, it just gives it a nicer look, secures a little bit better, and I just want to mention, when you are sewing with this, if you pull it tight, sometimes it can bunch up. So you want to make sure that when you're sewing this, you're kind of pulling, I'll show you in a minute, but you're kind of pulling the hide apart a little bit so that it's not bunching up and it's going to look all wonky when you're done. But you'll see in a second what I'm talking about, because it kind of pulls everything tight and it won't give it that nice clean look when you're done. But anyways, we're going to continue with the whip stitch, or sorry, not the whip stitch, the blanket stitch, all the way until we get to the other side. So we're going to want to stop about here, because we don't want to sew that thumb all the way down. We want the thumb to flip up. Okay, so keep going. Keep going, making sure you're getting both hides in there. You're sewing them together, not too close to the edge, but not too far out. You want to kind of make sure you're lining them up properly so it looks nice and smooth when you're done. And keep going. Okay, so we're getting closer to where we're gonna stop. See, so just pull it apart like that if it gets a little bunched up, so that everything lays nice and and smooth when you're done. Okay, so you can kind of see where we need the thumb to lift up. If you're not sure and you don't want to go too far, then stop a little sooner. You can see it's kind of bunching up a little bit, so you want to pull it apart and make sure it's nice and flat. Okay, so you can take your next piece, which is going to be the bottom piece here, and you can lay it and kind of see how much space you have left that you need to sew. So I'm just going to place these together, trying to get an idea of how much left I have. So here we go. So I can kind of see, okay, I still have to sew up that much. So you want to kind of line up the bottom to where the cuff is going to go, and then that will give you an idea of how much you want to close up that opening there on the left side, right there. So we want to close up this part. So I'm just going to clip this so I can kind of see where I'm going. And if you don't have the clips and you're not too sure on how to measure this, you can always just make a little tick mark of kind of where like you need to stop the sewing for the thumb, or just get creative and figure out a way to do it too. Okay, so I'm going to move the thumb out of the way, and I'm going to continue sewing down that left side all the way to the end, so all the way to the cuff, the opening of the mitten. So just make sure you have those lined up nicely. The best way to do it is just line up the bottom pieces, and then you kind of have an idea that it's gonna line up straight. And if you do make a mistake, you can always take it out and do it again, so it's not the end of the world, especially if you're learning. So I want to make sure that these two line up nicely, and then we just continue our blanket stitch all the way down into the end. And the thing is with this one, normally with mittens, like how I learned and how most people do it, they sew up the entire thing and then they add the fur at the end. So this I find is a lot easier if you keep one side open. So don't sew up both sides when you're doing this, or it'll be very hard to attach the fur. So it will make sense when you see me do it, but it's just how I like to do it. I just feel like it's much easier, and you don't have to like struggle as much to get the fur sewn in the little opening, and it saves time too. So when you get to the end, you just want to tie your sinew off, and then we also want to burn this end. So you can cut it, or I'm just so used to doing this that I just kind of burn it off with the lighter, but if you're not comfortable with that, just cut off the end and then leave a little tail and burn it. And that one we won't see because that will be covered by the fur, so we don't have to worry about hiding that one. Okay, so we can see this is going to match up nicely. It might look like the bottom piece is a little smaller. Trust me, it'll work. Okay, so this is how it's going to look. That's the front. This is the inside. So we want to make sure that this flips over, opens up like a book. Okay, like that. And then we're going to attach the fur to this part. So we don't want to sew up the entire thing. We want to attach the fur like this. So when it flips over, you can see it just lays on top. And then you don't see any of the seams. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing next. If you're adding any kind of keychain, you want to add that before we add the fur. So I'm going to show you how to add the little piece of leather for the keychain. Okay, so we're going to grab our little piece of leather for the keychain, and we're going to put that in the close to the middle seam for the mittens, so that when we flip the fur, it will be on the inside. So if that will make sense. So you can place it wherever you'd like. I'm just going to put it towards the end of the mitten. You can put it in the middle, you can put it on the side, but you want to have it on that, on the whole piece that we beaded on, because that part is going to be the easiest place to have it sewn in, that it doesn't interfere with any other sewing. So we're just going to tack this down. I'm just going to do a simple stitch. So I'm just going through the front, and then I'm going back through the back and bringing my needle up through the front, just like that. And you just want to do a few of those little simple stitches so that it just holds in place. If you feel like it's secure enough, then you can go ahead and cut your sinew and then tie it again and then just burn the end. And sometimes it's kind of hard to find the center of the sinew again when you've been working with it, but try to just divide it into two and then you can tie it in a knot. So just got to use my finger a little bit here. Sometimes it doesn't want to work great. Okay, there we go. So now I'm just going to tie this into a knot and then I am just going to burn that end so that it's nice and secure and it won't come undone. That one, the placement is good. So this is a time where you can kind of look and see if you want the placement. The keychain ring, you can add it before or you can add it after. This one opens up, so just to keep it from not getting in the way of sewing, I would suggest just doing it after. Just like that, super easy to get on. It's just kind of bulky, and when you're working with a small project, having less on it is sometimes easier. So I'm just going to remove that. Okay, and then now we're going to add the fur. So this part, we want to make sure that the arrow is facing towards us because that's the fur direction, or else the fur is going to go the opposite direction and it won't look so pretty. We want to make sure that the right sides are matching up straight. Your fur might look like it's a little bit long. That's okay. We can trim it after. So don't worry about that if it looks like it doesn't match up completely. So for this one, we're going to use sinew again. So we want to grab our sinew and our glover's needle, and we're going to thread that and just make a knot at the end and do a blanket stitch to attach the fur to the mitten. Okay, so we're going to start on the right side, make sure those two match up. And we're just going to go ahead and do the same stitch. Be careful because your sinew sometimes gets a little tangled in the fur because it's waxy. It kind of pulls it through a little bit, so you might have to take your time with this part. So again, blanket stitch all the way, all the way. So once we get to the keychain part, we're going to flip that down so it's out of the way. So it's going to be in the middle when the mitten is completed. So blanket stitch all the way. And if you don't have a thimble, you can head to our Facebook or YouTube and just watch our little tutorial on how to make a thimble. It's super easy and helps your fingers a ton. Okay, so we want to make sure that when we get to the end here, everything is nice, not super bunched up. This is our last part. So you can see there's a little bit extra here. We're just going to trim that. And if you're not sure, trim less than more because we cannot add more. We can always take off more. Okay, so you can kind of see now how this fur is going to flip over and the direction of the fur looks nice. So here we want to match up the two sides. So we're matching up where the fur starts with the cuff. And again, I'm using my clips, but you can kind of see here they line up. So make sure those parts line up, then everything will work smoothly. Okay, so again, we're just doing the blanket stitch. I'm going to close up the fur first. So stitch all the way to the end. Make sure you're not pulling it super tight or it could rip. So just gentle. And then I'm going to trim that off. And then we're going to tie a knot in that one. And then burn the end with this one. Be careful because the fur will burn very easily. So get it out of the way. Okay, and then the last part we're going to do is stitching up the side and then the thumb. So the exact same thing we've been doing, we're just going to do the blanket stitch and close up the rest. And make sure when you're sewing that you're holding both pieces together. You want everything to match up perfectly. So this takes a little practice with your fingers while you're sewing. You just want to make sure everything is nice and lined up properly. So sometimes you just gotta adjust as you're sewing. So again, just doing a blanket stitch here, going up the side. Just gonna close that up. You can see these two match up nicely. So just going and closing up that gap, and then we're gonna start closing up this piece here. So same thing. This is the part that's a little tricky. You might have to push the hide out of the way so you're not sewing through the front piece as well. You only want to sew through those two, so the bottom and the top that make the thumb. Okay, so continue. You can see here I'm kind of holding those pieces with my left hand, making sure they line up properly. And then you just want to close up the entire thing like this. Hold it with your fingers. And if it does get bunched up, then you want to just pull and pull the hide apart a little bit so the stitching is not all bunched up. Once we're at the end, we're going to do the same thing again. So we're just going to pull this apart, tie it in a knot here, and then I'm just going to trim this one so it's not too much sticking out, and burn that. Okay, so there we go. That's the shell of our mitten. You can kind of see here how the fur flips over. Just be gentle with it so you don't rip it. And then we have a little opening. So that's where we're going to use our liner. So this is the liner we use for the moccasins and mucklucks. So it's a great stuffing for pom-poms and little projects like this as well. So you're going to want to just try to fill some in the little thumb part, so you can cut smaller pieces if you want. I'm just using a little helper here to get it in the small pieces because it's really hard to get it in with your fingers. Just don't use something that's sharp because you could rip it. So the back of a pen or something is really good. So just push it in, play around with it, and then it will soften up as you start to move it with your hands and stuff, because at first it looks really hard and fluffy. If you don't want it super fluffy, you can always put less liner in it. And yeah, you just fill it up to what you would like. You can just pull the fur down. If you want to tack it down, you can do that too. It's really not needed, just if it's for like a little ornament or keychain. And this is what it looks like. So we're going to finish it off and put the key ring on it. And that's it. Super easy, super fun. And then if you have the seal, same thing, just with the seal, no beading. So I hope you had fun making these, and we would love to see what you make. So you can send us a message on Facebook or on our website with any of your creations.